have the rebellion of Absalom. Absalom, the son of David. He declares himself, he uses this trick that he tricked his father, and he got that paper and he showed it to 200 heads of Sanhedrin, and they all were convinced that they have to help Absalom, and he announces in Hebron that he is Melech Israel. So what does David do? David goes into exile, and David says, he tells all his servants, Kumu ve'nivrecha ki lo tiye lanu peleta mipnei Avshalom. Let us run away. There's no escape from Avshalom. Hurry to leave, lest he'll come, catch up with us, and smite the city by sword. Hika ha'ir lefi charev. Vayamru kol avdei hamelech el hamelech kol asher yivcha adoni hamelech hine avadecha. Okay, whatever you say, we will do. So then the king left, all his house left, but the king left what? V'yazov hamelech et 10 nashim pelagshim l'shmor habayit. He left 10 of his concubines in his house to keep the house, and they stopped in a faraway house, and all his servants passed by him, along with the archers, slingers. 600 men passed before the king. And the king said to Ittai Giti, Lama telech gam ata itanu? Why? He's asking, why is Ittai, the Giti, coming with them? He says, go back. Remain with your new king. You're a foreigner. Return to your place. He says, why should you get involved by coming with me? You're showing you're with me, getting involved in politics. It's not for you. Ittai said, Vayomer Chai Adonai v'chei Adoni HaMelech ki b'makom asher yeh sham Adoni HaMelech im l'mavet im l'chaim ki sham yeh avadecha. He says, he swore in Hashem's name that wherever you go, whether for death or for life, I'm going to go with you. Okay. So the Gemara Kiddushin says over here, before a man marries, he has to be careful that he has to check that his wife comes from an acceptable background, especially for Kohanim, because Kohanim have special laws who they're allowed to marry. For example, Kohanim is not allowed to marry a woman whose both parents were converts, right? According to one opinion, a Kohen may marry a daughter of anyone who was a soldier in King David's army. Why? The Gemara says because King David would only accept people who were kasher in his army. So therefore, from the fact they're accepted as a soldier, must be they had a perfect genealogy, right? He wanted that because the merit of their ancestors would benefit them during battle. Our pasuk says no, because you have Ittai, who was a non-Jew, from Giti, from Git, right? So therefore, from Gath. So what is he doing in his army? He's a non-Jew, and he also is the one who helped them nullify the idols, right? Break the noses and permit the metal to be used. So the Gemara says Ittai was not a full member of David's army. He joined in order to help frighten the enemy, but he wasn't participating in the actual fighting. He was like a mercenary. He's not enlisted in his army. He was hired. He was just used for a certain purpose. Okay. Ittai Giti says, I'm going to go with David. So the entire land was boche, was crying. Kol haaretz buchim, kol gadol. David HaMelech was ready to build a temple, and he finally conquered all the enemies, and we have a good king, and all of a sudden drama. Now everybody sees this fight between a father and a son. So everybody was crying. And what happened? והנה גם צדוק כל הלווים איתו נושאים את הארון ברית האלוקים ויציקו את הארון האלוקים ויד אביתר התום כל העם לעבור מן העיר. So the king was passing by, and they see the tzadok, the Kohen Gadol, and the Levim were passing by with the Ark of the Covenant of the Ark. They put it down, and Aviatar went up until all the people of the city finished passing from the city, and they bring it back to Yerushalayim. Remember, where was it? It was in the Oved Edom. It was in this guy's house this whole time, right? Now they're bringing it to Yerushalayim, and the king said to Tzadok, return the Ark of Hashem to the city. If I find favor in Hashem's eyes, he will bring me back. And if he says thus, I desire you not, then I'm prepared. Hashem says, David says, if Hashem says, Lo chafatzti becha, okay, I'm ready to accept it also, if that's what Hashem wants, right? So the king then said to Tzadok Kohen, do you agree? Return to the city in peace, and your son Achimatz, Yonatan, his son Aviatar will go with you. So they go and they'll go back to Yerushalayim. And where did David go? David went to David Olab Mamaleh Azitim. Har Zitim went to the Mount Olives. Boche, crying. Rosh lo chafui, covered head. V'hu olech yachef, he was walking with no shoes. And all the people wrapping their heads, crying as they followed him. And it was told to David, Achitophel is part of the conspirators with Avshalom. And David said, please confound the advice, Achitophel or Hashem. What is going on over here? Why did he go away all the way to Mount Olives? Okay, so first of all, what was this conversation he had with the Aviatar? So the Gemara Sechiyuma says he was actually consulting the Choshed, the Urim V'Tumim, right? Urim V'Tumim was the stones in the breastplate. It would glow up when you ask it a question, and you have to decipher the code, and you'll be able to get an answer from Hashem. So there's a disagreement how the letters would light up. According to one opinion, the letters that made the answer would stick out, but they remained in place, so the Kohen would have to arrange them properly to understand the answer. Another opinion is the letters in the Choshen would actually rearrange themselves to write out the response. Even bigger miracle. We learn from our pasuk that Kohen has to have Ruach HaKodesh. King David put a question to the Urim and Tumim through Eviatar, the Kohen Gadol, but Eviatar was not able to get a response because he had no longer had Ruach HaKodesh. So as the pasuk says, he went up, it means he lost his role as Kohen Gadol. In the next pasuk, we see David asked Tzadok, not Eviatar, rather Tzadok, his son, and he was able to do it, so therefore that's a sign he was the Kohen Gadol. So now, so even in King David's time, they had the Urim and Tumim. The Urim and Tumim stopped working, the Gemara Sotah says, when the reign of King Shlomo ended. After King Shlomo ended, that's it, there was no more Urim and Tumim. Okay, fine. So now what happens? He goes bare, he goes to Mount Olives, he's crying, his head is covered, he's wearing no shoes. Why is he now wearing no shoes? So one possibility is that he was barefoot, not wearing shoes, and we could learn from here, what's Yechef? Yechef means no shoes, so that's what you have to do on Yom Kippur also. Right? Not wearing shoes, one of the afflictions you have to observe, because he was crying, he wasn't suffering. So you see one of the signs of suffering is taking off your shoes. Okay, fine. So now the pasuk says that he came to the summit, right? And what did he do? Where's this pasuk 32? Yeah. David bad rosh asher yishtachveh sham elokim, meaning lekarto chushi arki karuot chotno vadma al rosho. The pasuk says David was approaching the summit where he bowed before God. And there before him was Hushai the Arki, with a ripped shirt and dirt on his head. He says, what are you doing here? He says, I want to help you. He says, listen, I went to Avshalom, and I say, I'll be your servant. I always was your father's servant, now I'm your servant, and I want to help you. So Hushai is saying, listen, King David, I'm going to go to Avshalom, and I'm going to pretend to be his friend, I'll be your secret agent. So then he says, are you willing to let me do it? So he says, no problem. Okay, go ahead, do it. And it begins the way of King David's ability to come back to the city. So now, why did he go to the mountain over here? And the pasuk, the Midrash says over here something beautiful. The Gemara Sanhedrin says, what does the Torah say? The Torah says you're allowed to marry a Fatoah, right? If a Jewish soldier is going to the war and he sees a non-Jewish woman who catches his eye, the Torah permits him to marry her after a certain amount of steps to go through. Why? Because the Torah knows that he has a great desire, he's going to fall to it, so the Torah permitted it. Now, what's the next parasha in the Torah after Ifat Toar? Next parasha is talking about Ben Sorei Moreh, right? So the Gemara learns why are these two things next to each other, to teach you that what? And then whoever has the Ifat Toar is going to lead to have Ben Sorei, a rebellious son. So then what does it mean over here? He went to the summit of the mountain. The Rosh is related to another pasuk. It says in Sefer Daniel, and it says Rashe Zahav was a fine gold. The head of the idol was a fine gold. So the Gemara is telling us that David, he ended up looking like as if he did two sins. What's the two sins? Number one, that what our pasuk teaches, when Avshalom rebelled, David considered worshiping an idol. Okay, now we have to understand what that means. He was very depressed, and therefore he decided to go serve an idol. That obviously doesn't mean that. It means that it's going to be Chilul Hashem. What's the Chilul Hashem? He says that that David said if Avshalom succeeded in killing him without him committing a major sin, it'll be even greater Chilul Hashem. Right? They're going to say, look at David, look what kind of son he has, look what he does to him, look at how much suffering, look, he lost the kingship like this. That's a big embarrassment. And we don't know of any sin that David did. The sin with Bathsheba, that he did teshuvah for that already. That's it. Natan gave him rebuke. He right on the spot. He gave teshuvah. So, what's the reason this happened? So must be. You see, even if you're as holy as David, look how a person is going to fall and how a person is going to get punished. So there's Chilul Hashem. So what did he do? And he wanted to sin. King David went on the mountain to go look that he's doing Avodah Zarah in order people should say, oh, look, you see, David did Avodah Zarah. That's why this happened to him. He didn't want to minimize the Chilul Hashem. So Hushai told him, no, what do you mean? It's going to be a huge Chilul Hashem. They're going to say, if you serve idols, they're going to say, David served idols, so how are we going to fight our Yetzirah? Even King David fell. So Hushai said, but still, it would not be a Chilul Hashem if David was killed by Avshalom, because they'll say the reason why this happened to you is because you married Yifat Toar. And whoever marries Yifat Toar, they have a Ben Soreh Moreh. So David said, what do you mean? But the Torah permits us to marry Yifat Toar. Hushai says, no, it is permitted, but at the end of the day, it still could happen. It doesn't mean you should do it. Just because it's permitted doesn't mean you should do it. Therefore, people will not think that Hashem was unfair if Avshalom killed David. Rather, they're going to say it's because he married Yifat Toar. So therefore, don't do the Avodah Zarah, Hushai was telling him. And we're going to see how exactly he's going to ask him to get him back to the city. Baruch Adonai Olam.